My ex didn't think it rained over the ocean because there was already so much water there. She was shocked when it rained while we were on a cruise. We passed a windmill on a gusty day. She remarked that it was way too windy and they should turn the windmill off. She was completely serious. My partner isn't a total idiot, but she does act on impulse sometimes, and, well, that's pretty much the same thing. It's gotten to the point where we joke about her Skittles moments, named after the time she dropped a Skittle and didn't notice until it had melted into her fitted bedsheet. Without thinking, and before I could stop her, she calmly grabbed some scissors and cut out the stained piece of sheet. She stayed calm until she picked up the cut section and realized what she'd done. She was genuinely upset, as it was a favorite set of hers. She doesn't make these kinds of questionable decisions all the time, but when she does, it's always both hilarious and frustrating. We were driving down the road, and she looked out the window at a field full of cows. Then she asked, "Do they call it pasteurized milk because the cows live in a pasture?" I married her. My brother-in-law was born on June 14th. Back when he was single, he was quite the ladies' man. One birthday, he went to a club, and a pretty woman started talking to him. He casually mentioned, "It's Flag Day, my birthday." She looked at him in awe and said, "Your birthday is Flag Day? Wow." On a whim, he said, "Well, I really like Flag Day, so I had my birthday legally changed. I even went in front of a judge." She completely bought it. Later, as they were heading back to her place, he realized he had a bottle cap in his pocket. So he did the something behind your ear trick, like you do with little kids. "Oh my God, how long has that been in my hair? I'm so embarrassed." That's when he realized he couldn't in good conscience go home with her. He gave her a quick peck on the cheek and wished her a good night. We visited a science museum, and I casually mentioned that the land would have been different back in the Carboniferous period due to plate tectonics. She had never heard that the continents moved, so I explained the concept with tectonic plates, earthquakes, and volcanoes. She still didn't believe me, so I found a display in the museum that explained it. After seeing it, she said she was amazed that I had enough influence to have them set up a display just to back up my lies. He told me about all the inventions he had, claiming he'd be rich once one of them sold. I asked for details, and he said his best invention was eye drops that, with just one drop, would eliminate the need for glasses. The guy is a mailman, not a doctor or scientist, and he wears glasses himself. I asked, "If these eye drops work, why do you wear glasses?" The eye drops didn't exist yet, but he believed that once someone else created them, he would make money because he invented them by dreaming them up. Edit. I briefly dated him years ago. He had no patents, just misguided dreams. Nice guy, but, well, a special kind of small-town fool. I dated a girl in high school, and one day we were hanging out at lunch, making fun of our ID card photos. I found a card in her wallet that said, "This person should not receive a blood transfusion." I asked, "Please tell me you believe in dinosaurs." And she replied, "Their bones were placed here by God to test us." I was just like, oh no. "Do you think getting drunk all the time while I was pregnant was bad for him?" She asked about her 5-year-old son, who had never spoken a word. She wasn't the main caregiver. We argued for months about how alcohol content percentage works. She insisted that if you halved a bottle, the alcohol content would drop to 5%, even though the bottle's alcohol content remained the same at 10%. She was an engineering graduate and had worked at a software firm for 12 years. Sigh. She always ignored the warning lights in her car until it broke down. We bought a car that tells you when to bring it in for service. One day she came to me, frustrated, saying the car was making noise. She said, "There's this big flashing message that says, 'Bring auto in for service,' and I can't get it to turn off. What should I do?" This person has a PhD too. I went on a double date with this girl and she was a bit goofy, more lacking in common sense than being outright dumb. Until one night. We were at a BBQ and she ordered ribs. While eating, she asked, "What part of the cow is this from?" We laughed, and then she stared at us all and asked again, "Did you not hear me? What part of the cow does this come from?" We all said, "Ribs." She responded, "I know the name from the menu, but what part of the cow is it?" I was done. I flew across the country to visit family, and we took his brother's dog for a walk. All the family members warned, "Don't let the dog off the leash." Towards the end of the walk, he decided to let the dog off, and I begged him not to. Eventually, I said, "If you let the dog off the leash and it goes wrong, I'll break up with you." It went wrong. I broke up with him. My ex thought he could play hockey and found what he thought were the perfect skates. He bought them for $200. His friend, who lived an hour and 20 minutes away, told him he got the same skates for $195. So my ex drove all that way to return the $200 skates and buy the $195 ones, costing $50 in gas. That should have been a huge red flag. But sadly, I was the idiot who stayed with him for a few more years. Back when vampire shows and movies were really popular, he became obsessed with vampires. When we went outside, he acted like the sun was hurting him and shielded his face with his hands, groaning in pain. Imagine Jim from The Office doing a vampire prank, but he was more dramatic and serious. He put a load of laundry in with mixed colors and whites and added bleach to whiten the whites. When everything ended up bleached, he was stunned. I had to explain that bleach doesn't know what you want to whiten. It will bleach everything in the load. He was shocked, truly amazed. He once told me that God put different races on separate continents to prevent interracial breeding and that the cause of all physical and mental diseases was mixed-race relationships. We wouldn't have diseases if everyone stayed on their own continents. I had no idea he was such a racist piece of shit before that. I briefly dated a manipulative person who hid behind his weird interpretation of the Bible. He thought, "I can do anything as long as I ask for forgiveness afterward. I'm saved, so I can't go to hell no matter what I do." One time, we had a conversation about how he let his friends bully me, and I didn't want to hang out with them anymore. In the middle of a healthy relationship discussion, I told him, "If I ever saw people mistreating you, I'd defend you because I care about you." He said, "But I'm not you. Just because you pee sitting down doesn't mean I have to pee sitting down." That's when I realized what I was dealing with and ended things right there. Also, I'd seen him pee sitting down. Just wanted to add that I went on a couple of dates with a woman who owned 2 large, energetic dogs. When she got them, she was told she'd need to walk them every day for exercise. To save time, she'd just drive them around, thinking that would do the job. I called him the day he moved into his first student apartment. He said, "I'm fine, just really want a cup of tea but can't have one until tomorrow." "Why not?" I asked, knowing full well he had pans. "There's no kettle here. We'll have to buy one." "If you're that desperate, just boil water on the stove." "Oh yeah. How do I do that?" I ended up explaining to an adult man how to boil water. Edit. I did marry that guy, but only after teaching him to cook. She didn't know how to get to my house from anywhere except her own. Her work was halfway between my house and hers, but she had to go home first before driving to my place. This was before smartphones. One Sunday, I was lounging when skiing came on the TV. The commentator mentioned that the contestants were going 100 kilometers per hour at a certain point. My ex shouted, "But-it," at the TV. I asked why, and she said, "There's no way they could know how far they've gone in an hour since the race is only 2 minutes long." Another time, she said, "I have an aunt who lives in London. Is that near England?" I had a girlfriend who threw fits about everything. One day, she saw me having lunch with a woman on a restaurant terrace on campus. She stormed in, screaming at me and insulting the poor woman, saying she was old enough to be my mother. When she finished, I said, "So Mom, this is X, my ex-girlfriend." My mom still brags about how my ex thought she could pull a guy my age. At least, she took it well. He tried making cookies and kept opening the oven door for long stretches, letting all the heat out. When I told him this was slowing the process down, he insisted that because the oven was set to 400 degrees, it would stay at 400. It took an hour to bake a single sheet of cookies, and he said, "I don't know why it's taking so long." He insisted on doing this on Thanksgiving, tying up my oven, and got frustrated when he found out the turkey would take 3 hours to cook. As you can imagine, it didn't work out. Oh, my high school sweetheart, whom I was with for 4 years. There are countless examples of him being terrible, but I'll share one. Whenever we went to restaurants, he'd order water, cover it with a napkin, flip it over, and leave it upside down. He thought it was hilarious when the busboy spilled the water everywhere. I found it obnoxious. Years later, after having my second child, I ran into him at my ex's family summer cottage where he was working. He brought our food to the table, and after sitting with me, he made snarky comments about my newborn like, "I'm glad I didn't have kids with you, because I want mine to have blue eyes." I offered to pay the tip and asked him for a new water. Then I poured all the loose change and ones from my purse into the water and put a napkin on top. You can guess the rest.